Welcome to Hot Springs Village Inside Out, a weekly podcast where Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is the star. Join me, Randy Cantrell, and my co-host Dennis Simpson as we discuss the history, facts, people, places, events, lots more surrounding Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. Visit the website at hotspringsvillageinsideout.com.
Hi guys, it's Dennis Simpson here with Hot Springs Village Inside Out. My co-host Mr. Randy is tied up doing some other things right now, so I wanted to give you a quick episode and wanted to answer some questions. We had talked about, and Randy posted, and I appreciate him doing that, we had talked about my article with Planet Money on NPR, Is Living in a City Worth It? And the answer I came up with was not so much. It was heard by about 27 million people, the condensed version, about 10 minutes long, and the hour-long version was about 3.6 million listeners to date that we know of. And in it, I certainly promoted Hot Springs Village inside and out. And I think really I need to tell the story about how it started. It's very interesting. I started an email with the fine folks at NPR, and I just off the cuff said, you know, I hear all this hustle and bustle of the city thing, and that's the life, and that's how all the synergy actually happens. And for me, I think that's not exactly the way it works for me. So in the article, I sent a message, and I said, you know, in my world, the way that I'm doing things, the independent entrepreneur with the techie, the quality of life's not there. So I shared that, and about 3 months later, just out of the blue, Greg Rostenkowski, who does the newsletter for Planet Money and does several articles, called and said, "Hey, can you do an interview today?" And I said, "Well," he said, "Can you get to a studio?" I'm like, "I kind of got one right here. Yeah, sure, I can get to a studio. What do you want to record?" And he's like, "Oh, get these levels right and do all this." And I'm like, "Okay." And I said, "Well, you know, I'm getting ready to go to Gatlinburg." And he said, "Well, that's incredible because I'm going to Nashville." And I said, "So where do you live?" He said, "Manhattan." And I said, "Well, have you ever been to Nashville?" And he said, "No." And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "You know, Nashville is a really awesome place. We love Broadway. We love the music. We love all the stuff downtown. It's exciting. It's wonderful. And if they don't get a handle on their traffic, it's going to be counterproductive very soon." And they're trying, they were trying to come up with a $1 billion rail system and train, and that kind of fell apart at the time. I don't know where it is now. And he noted that he did like Nashville. He thought it'd be interesting, and he wanted to compare notes when we got back. And I'm, sure, okay. So we recorded an episode and talked about it for a minute. And in the meanwhile, we're getting everything ready to talk about it. And I said, so, quality of life. I have a $210,000 house on the lake with a boat dock and 2,200 square feet inside the world's safest, largest gated community. My POA dues are $70 a month. It's heaven on earth. And if you're watching video, you'll see right back behind me, the tree on that side is one of the places where the bald eagle hangs out. And he said, you have bald eagles? I said, well, the bear was down the lake last fall, but yeah, we've got a bear that'll swim the lake. We've got turkeys, we've got geese, we've got deer. Deer are a problem, literally. There's so many of them. But yeah, we have these things. And I said, for this number, now I don't make what I could make in a city. And he said, well, that's what we're going to do about, that's the story we're going to tell. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see how it works out. Let's see how it goes out. And by the way, one of the downsides of recording on the lake, as I'm doing here, is that, there we go, in 3, there we go, there goes my boat on the lake. It's part of one of the things we rent out here on Lake DeSoto. Anyway, as the boat passes, hey folks, the more we spoke, I talked to Greg, and he confided to me personally that he was 38, commuted 45 minutes a day, both ways, on a subway train. He rarely got a seat. He typically stood the whole time. Was living with a roommate he really wasn't that nuts about, and that he had great Thai restaurants nearby. And I'm thinking, hour 45 commute on a train, standing up in a very expensive place. And one of the questions I came back to him was, let's talk about quality of life when you retire. And that's the objective, right? He said, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I think he's coming up on 40, like I say. And I said, well, can you afford to live where you're living now when you retire? Oh, no, I'll have to move away. I said, well, isn't that kind of a flaw? If the place you're staying now that you think's great because they got great Thai restaurants can't sustain, or you can't sustain yourself in that environment, then what future is there? He was like, yeah, and I told him more, and we joked, and I finally said, maybe I should send you a care package. This is in early to mid 2019. Enter 2020 and a pandemic. And I'm keeping in touch with Mr. Greg Rostenkowski, who's a great guy. I really enjoyed working with him and talking with him. And he mentions that he has moved to California, rural California, the Napa Valley area, because of health concerns and many others. Who wants to be in Manhattan with all that hustle and bustle when there's all that COVID. And at those times it was really a dire situation, if you know what I mean. And he has since moved out of the major metropolitan areas and has many of the NPR correspondence, which I'm a questioning kind of guy, and it brings me up to ask, why? Why did you ever think you had to be in Manhattan in the first place? You're doing the same exact radio programs, and I think they're good quality radio programs that you've always done. You're in Napa Valley, or outside Napa Valley. You've got other correspondents at Orange Beach, Alabama. You've got other correspondents in Vegas and Pueblo, New Mexico. The question that we originally raised, is living in a major city worth it? I think it needs to be revisited, and I've offered that to Greg more than once. But not only does it need to be revisited, I think the entire population needs to think about it. What do you really, really, really need? Now, for me personally, I don't really like commuting. It's a complete waste of my life. I would rather be here at the lake doing this. I'd rather be online with you and talking. Now, don't get me wrong, I love talking to people. I love having people around. And I love traveling. I love going and seeing different parts of the world. But to get in a steel box, frankly, a very expensive steel box, and drive dangerously down public roads with a lot of other crazy people at a particular hour of the day, twice a day, because we have to be there at 8 and we should be home by 6, I think we need a reevaluation. I think the pandemic is making us all look at life a little differently. To that end, I welcome you to Hot Springs Village, and I welcome you to Hot Springs Village Inside Out. Hope you're enjoying our podcast. I hope you'll check us out at hsvinsideout.com, www.hsvinsideout.com, and happy to have the conversation more with you. Uh-oh, here comes my boat. I got to go. Great. Thanks seeing you again. Talk to y'all soon.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Hot Springs Village Inside Out, a podcast where Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is the star. Please subscribe to the podcast. You can do that by visiting our website, hsvinsideout.com, and tell a friend.